The Griot Tale. The Shadow in the Night. It was a night unlike any other. The moon was full, casting an eerie glow over our village. I was lying in bed when I heard it, a soft, haunting melody drifting through the air. It was the sound of a kora, played with a skill that sent shivers down my spine. I got up and looked out the window. In the distance, near the old baobab tree, I saw a figure, a shadow moving slowly, almost dancing. The figure was tall and slender, its movements graceful yet unsettling. The kora's notes seemed to weave through the night, pulling me toward the window. I watched, entranced, as the figure continued its eerie dance under the moonlight. That night marked the beginning of a tale I would never forget. As the melody faded into the darkness, I felt a chill run down my spine. Something was not right. The air felt heavy with a sense of foreboding, and I knew that this mysterious figure held secrets that would soon unravel our peaceful village. Little did I know, the arrival of this stranger would lead us into a world of shadows and untold mysteries. The stranger. The next morning, the village was buzzing with whispers. A stranger had arrived, an old griot with a mysterious air about him. He was tall and slender, with a face lined with age and eyes that seemed to see right through you. He wore a long, flowing robe of deep indigo adorned with intricate patterns. On his back, he carried a beautifully crafted kora. The elders welcomed him with the respect due to a griot, inviting him to share his stories and songs. But there was something unsettling about him that I couldn't quite place. His eyes, though kind, held a glimmer of something ancient and powerful. The villagers were curious, but I felt a knot of unease in my stomach. As the day went on, I kept my distance, observing him from afar. He moved with a grace that seemed almost otherworldly, and whenever he spoke, his voice carried a weight that silenced those around him. The stories he promised to tell were eagerly anticipated, but I couldn't shake the feeling that his arrival was more than just a coincidence. That evening, as the sun set and the villagers gathered, I knew we were about to hear tales that would change our lives forever. The first story that evening. The village gathered around the fire to listen to the griot's stories. He began with a tale of bravery and magic, his fingers dancing over the strings of his kora. His voice was deep and mesmerizing, drawing us all in. He spoke of ancient heroes and fierce battles, of enchanted forests and mystical creatures. The fire flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to move with the story. As the story progressed, I noticed something strange. The shadows around us seemed to grow darker, and the air grew colder. The griot's eyes gleamed with a light that was both enchanting and terrifying. His voice carried an almost hypnotic quality, pulling us deeper into the world he was weaving. When he finished, the fire flickered and almost went out, leaving us all in an uneasy silence. The villagers exchanged nervous glances, and I could see the same unease reflected in their eyes. As we dispersed, I couldn't shake the feeling that the griot's stories held more power than we realized. The night was colder, the shadows darker, and I knew that the griot's presence was bringing something otherworldly into our midst. The warning. The next day, I spoke to my grandmother about the griot. She was the oldest person in the village and knew many things. Her face grew serious when I mentioned him. "Beware of the griot," she warned. "He carries with him stories that can change the world, but not always for the better. Listen carefully, but do not let him into your heart." Her words sent a chill through me. My grandmother rarely spoke in such grave tones, and I knew to take her warning seriously. I decided to keep my distance and watch him closely. That evening, I observed the griot as he interacted with the villagers. He seemed kind and wise, but there was an undercurrent of something darker in his demeanor. His stories were captivating, but they also had a strange, almost unsettling effect on those who listened. The villagers were drawn to him, hanging on his every word, but I remained cautious. I couldn't ignore the growing sense of dread that accompanied his presence. As the days went by, I noticed subtle changes in the village, whispers of shadows and strange occurrences that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. My grandmother's warning echoed in my mind, and I vowed to uncover the truth about the griot, the forbidden story. Despite my grandmother's warning, I couldn't stay away from the griot's stories. They were too captivating, too powerful. One night, he began a new tale, one that felt different from the others. It was darker, more intense. He spoke of a cursed village, much like our own, and a shadow that devoured the souls of the innocent. The villagers around me seemed entranced, unable to look away. I felt a knot of fear tightening in my stomach. The griot's voice was low and haunting, each word dripping with menace. The shadows around us seemed to grow darker, and the fire flickered as if struggling against an unseen force. The villagers sat in rapt attention, their faces reflecting a mixture of fear and fascination. I glanced at my grandmother, her face pale and tense. She seemed to sense the danger in the griot's words. As the story reached its climax, a cold wind swept through the village, and the fire almost went out. The griot's eyes gleamed with an unsettling light, and for a moment, I felt as if the shadows were closing in on us. When the story ended, the silence was thick with fear. I knew then that the griot's tales were more than just stories. They were a gateway to something dark and dangerous. The Vanishing Encampment. The morning after the forbidden story, something terrible happened. One of the villagers, a young girl named Amina, disappeared. Her parents were frantic, searching everywhere, but she was nowhere to be found. The village was in an uproar. Whispers of curses and dark magic filled the air. I couldn't help but think of the griot's story and the shadow that devoured souls. Was there a connection, or was it just a terrible coincidence? The griot remained calm, offering his condolences and joining the search. But there was something in his eyes, a glint of knowledge that made me uneasy. The villagers, desperate for answers, began to turn to him for guidance, trusting his wisdom and stories. As the days passed with no sign of Amina, the tension in the village grew. My grandmother watched everything with a wary eye, her suspicion of the griot growing stronger. I too felt a growing sense of dread, convinced that the griot's stories were more than just tales. They were warnings, or perhaps even causes, of the strange events unfolding in our village. The disappearance of Amina marked a turning point. The shadows that the griot spoke of seemed to be creeping into our lives, and I feared what might come next. The griot's secret. Determined to find answers, I decided to follow the griot. One night, I saw him leaving the village and slipping into the forest. I trailed him, keeping to the shadows. He moved with a silent grace, his steps barely making a sound. He led me to a clearing where he sat and began to play his kora. But this time, the melody was different. It was haunting and filled with sorrow. As he played, I saw shadows gathering around him, whispering secrets I couldn't understand. The moonlight cast an eerie glow over the scene, and the shadows seemed to move with a life of their own. The griot's eyes were closed, his face serene but intense. It was clear that he was communing with something beyond our world. I watched in awe and fear, realizing that the griot had a connection to the darkness that haunted our village. The shadows seemed to respond to his music, swirling around him in a dance of light and dark. It was then I realized the griot had a power that was both mesmerizing and terrifying. He could control the shadows, bending them to his will. The implications of this discovery were staggering, and I knew I had to uncover the full extent of his abilities and intentions. The old manuscript I returned to my grandmother and told her what I had seen. Her face grew pale, and she led me to an old chest hidden under her bed. Inside was a manuscript, ancient and fragile. She explained that it had been passed down through generations. It spoke of a griot who could control shadows and bend them to his will. This griot, it said, could either bring great fortune or terrible ruin. My heart raced as I read the words. The stranger in our village was no ordinary storyteller. The manuscript detailed the history of the shadow griot, describing his powers and the consequences of his stories. It warned of the danger he posed and the need for caution. My grandmother's voice was filled with urgency as she recounted the legends. She believed that the griot in our village was the same one from the manuscript, or at least a descendant of his line. Armed with this knowledge, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I had to protect our village from the darkness the griot wielded. But how could I confront someone with such power? The manuscript mentioned a way to neutralize the griot's influence, but it was vague and incomplete. I knew I had to dig deeper, uncovering every piece of the puzzle to save our village. The confrontation, armed with the knowledge from the manuscript, I confronted the griot. I found him near the Baobab tree, his kora resting on his lap. The moon cast a silvery glow over him, making him look almost otherworldly. "Who are you?" I demanded. "And what do you want with our village?" He looked at me with those piercing eyes and smiled. "I am but a humble griot," he said softly. "My stories are my only power." But I could see the truth in his eyes. There was more to him than met the eye, and I was determined to uncover his secrets. He gestured for me to sit, and reluctantly I did. He began to speak, his voice calm and measured. "Every griot has a purpose," he said. "Some bring joy, others bring sorrow. My stories are a reflection of the world's balance, light and dark, life and death." His words were cryptic, and I struggled to grasp their meaning. "Your stories are causing harm," I argued. "People are disappearing, and the village is in turmoil." The griot sighed, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "Sometimes the darkness must be faced before the light can return," he replied. His words left me with more questions than answers. I realized that confronting him would not be enough. I needed to understand the true nature of his power and find a way to counter it. The disappearance of the kora. One night, the griot's kora went missing. The village was in turmoil, and the griot seemed more agitated than ever. Without his instrument, he couldn't tell his stories. Some villagers were relieved, hoping this would break his hold over us. But I knew better. The kora was the source of his power, and without it, we were all in danger. I decided to search for it, hoping to find it before the shadows could take hold again. I started my search in the griot's hut, looking for clues. The hut was sparse, with only a few personal belongings and a small altar adorned with strange artifacts. I found nothing that indicated the kora's whereabouts. Next, I searched the village, asking if anyone had seen anything suspicious. The villagers were nervous, their fear growing with each passing hour. No one had seen the kora, and whispers of curses and dark magic spread like wildfire. As the night deepened, I ventured into the forest, retracing the griot's steps from the night I followed him. The moonlight cast eerie shadows, and the air was thick with tension. My heart pounded as I searched, determined to find the kora and uncover the truth behind the griot's power. The cave. My search led me to a cave on the outskirts of the village. The entrance was hidden by vines and moss, and the air inside was damp and cold. As I ventured deeper, I found the griot's kora placed on a stone altar. The cave was filled with strange symbols and artifacts that pulsed with dark energy. I reached for the kora, but before I could touch it, a voice echoed through the cave. "You should not have come here," it said, sending chills down my spine. I turned to see a figure emerging from the shadows. It was a guardian, a spirit bound to protect the cave and its contents. The guardian's form was ethereal, made of shifting shadows and flickering light. "Why have you come?" it asked, its voice echoing in the cavernous space. I explained my quest and the danger the griot posed to our village. The guardian listened carefully, then nodded. "The kora must be returned to the griot, but it must be done with great care. Its power is both a blessing and a curse." The guardian's warning weighed heavily on me. I took the kora, feeling its strange energy pulse through my fingers. With the guardian's guidance, I left the cave, knowing that the next steps would be the most perilous yet. The guardian. The voice belonged to a guardian, a spirit bound to protect the cave and its contents. It appeared before me, a figure made of shadows and light. "Why have you come?" it asked. I explained my quest and the danger the griot posed to our village. The guardian listened carefully, then nodded. "The kora must be returned to the griot, but it must be done with great care. Its power is both a blessing and a curse." The guardian's presence was both awe-inspiring and intimidating. It floated above the ground, its form shifting and shimmering. "The griot's power comes from the balance of light and dark," the guardian continued. "If the balance is disrupted, it can bring great harm. You must restore the kora to him, but also ensure that he uses it wisely." With the guardian's warning in mind, I took the kora and left the cave. As I emerged into the moonlit night, I felt a renewed sense of determination. The weight of the kora in my hands was a reminder of the responsibility I now carried. The guardian's words echoed in my mind, urging me to tread carefully. I knew that returning the kora to the griot was only the first step. I had to find a way to ensure that his stories no longer brought darkness to our village. The return of the kora. I returned the kora to the griot, who accepted it with a strange, knowing smile. "You have done well," he said, but the danger is far from over." His words filled me with dread. That night, the griot began a new story, one that seemed to pulse with dark energy. The villagers were entranced, unable to look away. I could feel the shadows closing in, and I knew we were running out of time. The griot's voice was more powerful than ever, each word resonating with an eerie intensity. The fire flickered and danced, casting long, twisting shadows that seemed to come alive. The villagers sat in rapt attention, their faces reflecting a mixture of fear and fascination. I felt a sense of urgency, knowing that the griot's stories were more than just entertainment. They were a conduit for dark forces. I had to find a way to break his hold over the village. After the story ended, I approached my grandmother once more. She shared with me an ancient ritual, a way to confront the shadows and restore balance. The ritual required courage, sacrifice, and the light of a full moon. With the next full moon approaching, I knew we had to act quickly. The villagers' lives depended on it. The shadows grasp. As the griot's story continued, the shadows around us grew darker and more oppressive. I could see fear in the eyes of the villagers, but they were unable to break free from the griot's spell. I felt a cold hand grasp my shoulder, and I turned to see a shadowy figure standing behind me. Its eyes glowed with a sinister light, and I knew it was one of the spirits from the cave. The shadows were coming for us, and I had to find a way to stop them. The atmosphere was thick with tension, the air cold and heavy. The griot's voice seemed to weave through the darkness, binding us in place. The shadowy figure whispered in a language I couldn't understand, its grip tightening. Panic surged through me, but I remembered the guardian's warning and my grandmother's ritual. I had to stay strong. With a deep breath, I broke free from the shadow's grasp and moved closer to the griot. His eyes met mine, and I saw a flicker of recognition. The shadows writhed around us, but I held my ground. The villagers needed to see that we could fight back, that we could resist the darkness. I began to chant the words of the ritual, my voice trembling but determined. The shadows recoiled, and I felt a spark of hope. We could do this. We could reclaim our village from the grip of the shadows. The forgotten ritual. Desperate for answers, I turned to the old manuscript once more. It spoke of a ritual, a way to banish the shadows and break the griot's hold over the village. The ritual required the blood of a brave soul, the light of a full moon, and the griot's kora. With the full moon approaching, I knew I had to act quickly. I gathered the necessary items and prepared to perform the ritual, hoping it would be enough to save us all. The instructions in the manuscript were clear but ominous. The blood sacrifice had to be given willingly, and the light of the full moon would amplify the kora's power. I shared my plan with a few trusted villagers, including my grandmother. They agreed to help, understanding the gravity of the situation. We decided to perform the ritual at the old Baobab tree, a place of significance and power. As the night of the full moon approached, the tension in the village grew. The shadows seemed to grow bolder, their presence more palpable. The villagers looked to me for guidance, their fear evident. I felt the weight of their trust and knew that failure was not an option. The night of the full moon arrived, and we gathered at the Baobab tree, ready to face the darkness. The night of the full moon. The night of the full moon arrived, and I gathered the villagers around the old Baobab tree. The griot watched with a curious expression as I explained the ritual and what needed to be done. With a mix of fear and determination, we began. The moon's light bathed the village in an eerie glow, and the shadows seemed to writhe in anticipation. As I played the kora, the villagers chanted the words from the manuscript, their voices trembling but strong. Strong. The air was thick with magic, the tension palpable. The griot's eyes glinted with a strange light, and I could sense his power clashing with our efforts. The shadows around us grew darker, more menacing, but we held our ground. My hands trembled as I played the kora, its notes resonating through the night. The villagers' voices grew louder, their fear transforming into defiance. The old baobab tree seemed to hum with energy, its ancient roots connecting us to the earth and the moon above. As the ritual progressed, I felt a surge of hope. The shadows recoiled, their grip weakening. The griot watched, his expression shifting from curiosity to concern. We were making progress, but I knew the hardest part was yet to come. The sacrifice. The ritual required a sacrifice, and I knew what had to be done. With a heavy heart, I offered my own blood, hoping it would be enough to break the curse. As the blood touched the ground, the shadows recoiled, and the griot's eyes widened in surprise. The air was thick with tension, and I could feel the power of the ritual building. The villagers continued to chant, their voices growing louder and more confident. The moonlight intensified, casting an almost blinding glow over the baobab tree. The shadows writhed in agony, their forms dissolving in the light. The griot stepped forward, his expression a mix of anger and fear. "You cannot stop me," he hissed, his voice echoing with dark power. But I knew we were close. The villagers' chants reached a crescendo, and the kora's notes resonated with a force that shook the ground. I felt a surge of energy, the combined power of our determination and the ancient magic of the ritual. With one final powerful note on the kora, the ritual was complete. The griot let out a piercing scream as his form began to dissolve, the shadows retreating into the darkness from which they came. The light of the full moon bathed us in its protective glow, and I knew the worst was over. The griot's true form. As the ritual reached its climax, the griot's form began to change. His robe fell away, revealing a being made of shadows and light. The villagers gasped in shock and fear, but I held my ground. "You cannot stop me," the griot hissed, his voice echoing with dark power. But I knew we were close. With one final, powerful note on the kora, the ritual was complete, and the griot let out a piercing scream as his form began to dissolve. The air around us crackled with energy, the shadows retreating as the light of the full moon bathed us in its protective glow. The griot's true form was both beautiful and terrifying, a being of pure energy and darkness. His eyes blazed with fury, but I could see the fear in them as well. The villagers watched in awe and horror as the griot's power began to wane. The light of the moon seemed to strip away his strength, revealing the truth of his nature. He was a creature of balance, neither entirely good nor entirely evil. The ritual had exposed his true self, and in doing so, had weakened his hold over the village. The griot's form shimmered and flickered, the shadows dissipating into the night. With one final, anguished cry, he vanished, leaving behind only the faint echo of his power. The village was free, but the memory of the griot and his stories would linger forever. The Battle of Shadows. The griot's scream summoned a horde of shadowy spirits, each one more terrifying than the last. The villagers and I stood our ground, determined to see the ritual through. The spirits attacked, their cold hands grasping at us, but we fought back with the light of the kora and the strength of our will. The battle was fierce, and I could feel my strength waning, but I refused to give up. We had come too far to fail now. The shadows swirled around us, their forms shifting and changing with each attack. The villagers fought bravely, their fear replaced by a determination to protect their home. The kora's notes cut through the darkness, a beacon of hope in the chaos. My grandmother's voice rose above the fray, her chants guiding us and giving us strength. The spirits recoiled from her words, their power weakening. I played the kora with all my might, each note a strike against the darkness. The baobab tree seemed to pulse with energy, its roots grounding us and providing a source of strength. As the battle raged on, I felt the shadow's grip loosening. The villagers' unity and the power of the ritual were turning the tide. With one final powerful chord, the shadows began to dissolve, their forms dissipating into the night. The air was filled with the sound of victory, and I knew we had won. The Guardian's help. Just when it seemed we might be overwhelmed, the Guardian from the cave appeared. Its form was radiant, made of pure light, and it joined us in the fight against the shadows. With the Guardian's help, we began to turn the tide. The shadows recoiled from its light, and the villagers fought with renewed vigor. Together, we pushed the spirits back, driving them into the darkness from which they came. The Guardian's presence was awe-inspiring, its light cutting through the shadows like a blade. It moved with grace and power, its form shifting and shimmering as it battled the spirits. The villagers rallied around it, their fear replaced by hope. The kora's notes mingled with the Guardian's light, creating a symphony of strength and defiance. My grandmother's chants grew louder, her voice filled with power. The shadows writhed and twisted, their forms dissolving in the light. The guardian's light seemed to burn away the darkness, leaving nothing but empty air in its wake. As the last of the spirits retreated, the guardian turned to us, its eyes filled with gratitude. "You have done well," it said, its voice echoing with warmth. "The balance has been restored." With those words, the guardian faded away, leaving us in the peaceful light of the moon. The battle was over, and the village was safe once more. The final stand. The griot, now a shadowy wraith, made one last desperate attempt to regain control. He summoned a vortex of darkness, pulling at our very souls. But we stood firm, united in our determination to end the curse once and for all. With the guardian's light and the power of the kora, we focused our energy on the griot, driving him back. The vortex began to collapse, and the griot's screams filled the night as he was pulled into the void. The air was thick with tension, the darkness swirling around us like a storm. The griot's wraith-like form was terrifying, his eyes burning with fury. But we stood our ground, our unity and determination giving us strength. The kora's notes resonated through the night, a beacon of hope and defiance. The villagers' chants rose above the noise, their voices filled with resolve. The guardian's light cut through the darkness, weakening the griot's hold. I played the kora with all my might, each note a strike against the vortex. The baobab tree pulsed with energy, its roots grounding us and providing a source of strength. As the vortex began to collapse, the griot's form flickered and wavered. With one final powerful chord, the vortex imploded, pulling the griot into the void. His screams echoed through the night, then faded into silence. The darkness lifted, and the village was bathed in the peaceful light of the moon. The battle was over, and we had won. The light of dawn. As the first light of dawn broke over the village, the shadows began to dissipate. The air was filled with a sense of peace and relief. The villagers, exhausted but triumphant, embraced one another, their faces filled with joy and gratitude. The guardian bowed to us before fading away, its mission complete. The curse had been broken, and the village was free at last. The morning sun bathed the village in a warm golden light, driving away the last remnants of darkness. The villagers gathered around the baobab tree, their faces reflecting the relief and happiness that filled their hearts. My grandmother approached me, her eyes shining with pride. "You did it," she said, her voice filled with emotion. I felt a surge of gratitude for her guidance and the support of the villagers. The griot's kora, now a symbol of our victory, lay at the base of the baobab tree. We decided to place it in a place of honor, a reminder of the strength and unity that had saved our village. The light of dawn brought a new beginning, a chance to rebuild and heal. The shadows were gone, and the village was once again a place of peace and light. We knew that we would never forget the lessons we had learned or the courage we had found within ourselves. The griot's legacy. In the days that followed, we worked to rebuild our village and our lives. The old baobab tree stood as a reminder of the battle we had fought and won. The griot's kora, now a symbol of our victory, was placed in a place of honor. We told our children the story of the griot and the shadows, so they would remember the power of courage and unity. The village thrived, and we knew that we would never forget the lessons we had learned. The story of the griot and the shadows became a legend, passed down through generations. We held regular gatherings where the elders would recount the tale, ensuring that the bravery and determination of our people would never be forgotten. The kora was played in times of celebration and remembrance, its notes a reminder of the victory we had achieved together. The villagers continued to live in harmony, their bonds strengthened by the trials they had faced. The old baobab tree, with its ancient roots and towering branches, became a symbol of our resilience and the enduring spirit of our community. As the years went by, the memory of the griot and his stories remained a powerful force in our lives. We knew that the light of courage and unity would always prevail over the darkness. The new storyteller. With the griot gone, we needed a new storyteller to keep our traditions alive. The villagers chose me, and I accepted the honor with humility. I learned to play the kora, and I told stories of bravery, wisdom, and magic. The village gathered around the fire each night, listening to my tales and remembering the strength that had brought us through the darkest times. The spirit of the griot lived on, but now it was a force for good. As the new griot, I felt a deep sense of responsibility to honor the legacy of our village. I practiced the kora diligently, learning the melodies that had once brought both fear and hope. The villagers supported me, sharing their own stories and wisdom to help me grow as a storyteller. Each night, as the fire flickered and the stars shone above, I played the kora and recounted the tales that defined our history. The children listened with wide eyes, their imaginations sparked by the magic of the stories. The elders nodded in approval, their faces reflecting the pride they felt in our community. The role of the griot was not just to entertain, but to preserve our culture and inspire future generations. I embraced this role with all my heart, knowing that the power of storytelling would continue to shape our village for years to come. The Griot's Tale. Years passed, and the village continued to flourish. The story of the griot and the shadows became a legend, passed down through generations. As the new griot, I made sure to tell it with the reverence it deserved. The lesson was clear. Even in the darkest of times, the light of courage and unity could overcome any evil. And so, the griot's tale lived on, a testament to the power of storytelling and the enduring spirit of our village. The villagers gathered around the fire each night, eager to hear the tales that had shaped our history. The kora's notes filled the air, a reminder of the battles we had fought and the victories we had won. The children listened with rapt attention, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames. The elders shared their wisdom, adding depth and meaning to the stories. The old baobab tree stood as a silent witness to our journey, its roots deep and strong. It was a symbol of our resilience and the unity that had seen us through the darkest times. The village thrived, its people united by a shared history and a commitment to the future. As the years went by, I knew that the story of the griot and the shadows would continue to inspire and guide us. It was a tale of bravery, wisdom, and the enduring power of community. The griot's tale would never be forgotten, and neither would the lessons it taught us.